Good morning, America. You're listening to America's Voice Now. My name is Michael Evans. I'll be your host this morning. You know, over the weekend, our traitor-in-chief had the gall to go out and speak at the Ohio State University commencement speech, or commencement group. And he made a couple of very telling statements, which to the astute and informed and educated critical thinker will effectively give you the idea that he knows exactly where he's heading. Here's what he said. Unfortunately, you've grown up hearing voices that incessantly warn of government as nothing more than some separate, sinister entity that's at the root of all of our problems. Some of these same voices also do their best to gum up the works. They'll warn that tyranny is always lurking around the corner. You should reject these voices, because what they suggest is that our brave and creative and unique experiment in self-rule is somehow just a sham with which we can't be trusted. What that tells you is that he is trying to do his darndest to make sure that these youth ignore that which is so blatantly obvious and impossible to see, or to hide, I should say. He also went on to say that, after all, your democracy does not function without your active participation. At a bare minimum, that means voting eagerly and often. You see, when you look at the language that's used by an individual, and this particular individual, you'll see that he acknowledges and says things openly, but he puts a twist on it so that his liberal friends and his progressive ilk can take it in another way. But it should be clear to all that what he's really doing is blatantly stating his position, just as he did when he came out and said, we're 3 days away from fundamentally changing America. He was 3 days away from fundamentally changing America. Is that a fundamental change that the vast majority of America agrees with? Absolutely not. And I think that the veil that they're holding is beginning to fray. Now, that's evidenced by the constant abuse and the drumbeat of the mainstream media, which is really just the propaganda ministry at this point. There's an article out there from the Aurora Sentinel, which is some mealy-mouthed newspaper out in Aurora, Colorado, in which this guy actually says, we can only save ourselves from kidnappers at the NRA. He calls the real terrorist threat in America the National Rifle Association. And if you read this article, this guy named Dave Perry, he's the editor. And he says, I have seen the light. After all these years, I agree it's fruitless to give the benefits of the doubt to people who are so obviously corrupt, so clearly malevolent, so bent on hurting innocent for their own sick gain. No, not the wannabe sick kid who blew up the Boston Marathon or the freak that's mailing ricin-laced letters to the president. I'm talking about the real terrorist threat in America, the National Rifle Association. And he goes on after paragraph after paragraph after paragraph to demean the National Rifle Association, stating that basically they held the Congress under the gun, literally or figuratively, to vote down the gun legislation that's been wending its way through. Well, I beg to differ, but I have to tell you, Mr. Perry, and by the way, I'm going to give you his phone number. If you'd like to read this and then call this guy, I think we should besiege him with phone calls to let him know, and email, because both his phone number and his email are in here. There are 2,615 comments on this story, which is actually on his newspaper, and I read through a great number of them. There is not a single one that is supporting his position. Not a single one. Now, he may be getting his 15 seconds of fame, and one astute writer points out that he has a paid circulation of 7,500. I mean, not for nothing, but I think I've got a circulation of 7,500. and we're not as big as Aurora, Colorado. You know, the real problem here is that what we have is people who are so blinded by their ideology, or in the case of Obama, so blinded by their own agenda, that they have absolutely no concern whatsoever for the manner in which they achieve their end goal. In other words, they use the Machiavellian principle of the ends justify the means. Now, you know, critically thinking people will know and immediately understand that kind of approach to problems means that you are always off track, because you cannot utilize the ends to justify the means. It gives you leeway to act irresponsibly, unethically, immorally, and in a corrupt fashion. With all due respect, if you want proof of that, I submit to you Congress. They constantly say, well, the ends justify the means. I've got to pass this bill so I can get my bill done. Bob said that if he'll support my bill if I support his bill. The ends do not justify the means. That's why you hear me call for civil disobedience. Because at this point in time, we are not at a position, and the federal government, while it is absolutely 100% completely out of control, and we are in a fast free fall to tyranny, the time is not ripe for an armed conflict. And I'll tell you why. There should never be a justified use of the Second Amendment unless and until tyranny has been declared and made the law of the land. I'm going to say that again because I want you to understand the implications of what I'm saying here. The Second Amendment and your ability to utilize arms to preserve our republic was frankly never intended to be used by the founders. But it was put in place as a last-ditch effort, if you will, so that in the event that our republic was to collapse to tyranny, we would have a means to take it back. And I use the word take it back, or the phrase take it back, because that cannot be employed until they have taken the action that precipitates taking it back. Remember something here, that the Second Amendment is not a proactive use of weaponry. It has to be a defensive act. We're going to take a break. When we return, we'll talk more about that, and I'll open the phone lines up for you folks who want to comment on this and other issues. You can call us on the Wits End Classic Barbershop hotline at 257-1111 and 866-554-6636. We'll be back in just a moment.
One in 5 Americans has come into contact with these bloodthirsty creatures or knows someone who has. Reports of infestations have reached pandemic proportions. bedbugs. They feed on human blood and can leave skin erupting in red, itchy welts. They're also very difficult to control. Bedbugs do not just live in bedrooms, but wherever people go. Schools, movie theaters, offices, not even hospitals are immune to their invasions. The only way to prevent the spread of bedbugs is for each and every one of us to be vigilant and proactive, to learn the simple daily steps that minimize the chances of bringing bedbugs into our lives. And if they do get in, don't go it alone. Bedbugs are most effectively controlled using the help of a qualified and licensed pest professional. Learn more about the bedbug pandemic and how to protect your home and family at pestworld.org.
For the record, I don't allow PSAs on my show, and that one snuck its way in. I'm going to tell you what the real pestilence is in the United States of America. The real pestilence is the media. They have reached an epidemic proportion. And the reason that our nation is unaware, unawake, and for all intents and purposes, arguing against its own best self-interest is the fact that the media has become a pestilence on society. Their goal, their job, their function should be that of watchdog, and in fact they've now turned into attack dog, except they're attacking their own master. You see, when media becomes ideologically corrupted and they're more interested in supporting the chanting hatred of the government itself, we can no longer rely upon them to be watchdogs for us. And this guy, Perry, is a perfect example of that. This guy actually suggests that all NRA members should be imprisoned in Guantanamo Bay. I kid you not. He says it's time for the majority of Americans to fight the battle cowards in the Senate are too gutless to handle. If you have a relationship with terrorists at the NRA, end it. He says that the NRA has 4.5 million members. Well, it's actually 5 million. And he's stating that that small minority tipped the scales in Congress. I got to tell you, Perry, you're all whacked out because the NRA wasn't really what tipped the scales. What tipped the scales was citizens in every state calling up their legislators and saying to them, if you vote for this, we're going to remove you from office. I'm going to tell you guys something. This movement of anti-tyranny is not just occurring here in the United States. If you look at the headlines of what's going on around you in the world, there was a recent election in England. And the UKIP, which stands for the United Kingdom Independent Party, won like 140 out of 160 seats. The Tory party and the Liberal Labour Party were blown away. I mean, in stunned silence. And I encourage you to go out and look up the party platform for the UKIP. That's what they call them, UKIP. The UKIP party. Because it reads like a Tea Party manifesto. In fact, they call it their manifesto. But it reads like an American Tea Party manifesto of taking back our country, sealing the borders, freezing all immigration until such time as they can get a grasp and a handle on it, barring and protecting their national treasure by saying that anyone who is an illegal in the country cannot get access to their healthcare system, their welfare system, and so forth and so on. That their healthcare system needs to be straightened out completely. It is a manifesto that really, truly could almost, I mean, with the exception of a few phrases and a few ideas, come right out of the mouths of Americans. And this election was for their county leaders. They call them councilors. And I was impressed. I was impressed because what I see occurring here in the United States of America with Americans who are day in and day out becoming more and more active, more and more motivated to restore the principles of constitutional basis for our nation. I'm not just seeing it here. I told you a few weeks ago that it happened in Ireland. I'm telling you today that it happens in the UK. They're protesting in the streets of Paris against gay marriage, and they are demanding that the Socialist Party back off their ideological approach to government. You're seeing it throughout the Western world. You're seeing it in the Eastern world too, I might add. But I'm going to tell you, in the Middle Eastern world, you're seeing a rise in the theocracy and a push away from secular government. Now, our founders very clearly stated that a theocracy is out. We cannot have that. And by the way, the UKIP party is basically stating that the Sharia courts that have been allowed to grow up in the UK have to be dismantled, and they have to fall under English law. Now, what that tells you, for the astute reader who's reading between the lines, is that the British have made the mistake of allowing Sharia courts into their judicial system. And they now realize that they are being gutted from within. Guess what? So do the vast majority of English people, because they just voted in 140 out of 160 potential seats. That is such a landslide that you have to recognize how important that kind of a vote is. Now, these are not their ministers and their parliamentarians. These are their county leaders. But I'm going to tell you, their ideological left and right, they're progressive and conservative up there, which, again, just like ours, is a mirror image of rhinos and ultra-progressive liberals. In other words, their parliament is made up of the same trash that ours is, right? Which is basically a group of people that are all marching to the same agenda of Agenda 21. And by the way, the UKIP party tosses Agenda 21 under the bus and says no more of this nonsense. No more crap about global warming. No more crap about wind power. In fact, they want to ban wind power from having government subsidy. You ought to go read the UKIP party manifesto. It's interesting because it's a reflection of what's going on globally in our nation. Go ahead, caller. Welcome to the show.
Good morning, Mike. This is Mark from Philadelphia.
Good morning, Mark.
I'm calling from Philadelphia. I'm originally Missourian, so the listeners out there, I got stirred up. I thought maybe Missouri was doing a few things back when they passed that Real ID Act, the Anti-Real ID Act.
Yeah.
So, but when this Second Amendment Preservation Act came up, I really got motivated, and I did my part from outside the state to stir it up with the people, to get the attention, to put the attention on the legislators and the senators in the state of Missouri to do their thing. And I'm telling you, to me, this looks like a takedown. Somebody on the inside threw in a monkey wrench, which they had to know it would delay that process to get it in front of the governor, which means it's going to delay it probably till September anyway, because I believe that Nixon is going to veto it, even though he shouldn't because of all the public scrutiny he's getting, but I believe he will, because people in Missouri, you need to wake up. Who is the governor working for, really? The Department of Homeland Security? The Department of Justice? It looks like it to me, and I'm not even there, but I can see it clearly from here in Philadelphia.
Well,
thank you, Mike.
Thank you. Just let me comment on that. Are you still on the line with us?
I'm here. I'm still here.
Let me just comment on that. I spoke to a couple of House representatives the tail end of the week, and the only thing that's currently, just so an update so everybody gets it on the Second Amendment Preservation Act, the only thing that's holding this up now is that there were a couple of amendments that were inserted into the bill. They were like one-line amendments. They weren't whole bills. They were just minor things. And it is now back to the House of Representatives to pass this and get it in front of the governor's desk. And I can tell you that I've been told by 3 of them that they believe that by the end of this week it will be resolved and it'll be on the governor's desk. Now, for the record, what that means is that the governor has 3 choices. 1, he can pass it. 2, he cannot do anything with it, and after 15 days it becomes law anyway. And the third option would be that he could veto it. Under option 1, he passes it, and all is well with the world. Option 2, he doesn't do anything because of all the heat on him about these other issues, and all is well with the world 15 days from that date. Option 3 is he vetoes it, and then you are absolutely correct. We have to wait until the fall session, sometime in September-ish, when the House and Senate are back in session and attempt to override the veto. And I believe we have a veto-proof majority, but the question is, what will occur between now and September that would have made this bill valuable to us to have in place now? And
exactly.
I'm in agreement with you that I think that our legislature has sat on their hands on this, and I can prove that. Jason Smith submitted what for the most part everybody recognizes as a Monsanto Protection Act, Missouri style. And that thing went through the House and the Senate lickety-split in a matter of a couple of weeks. This thing has been on the counter for literally since 2009, and you can't get the votes to get it done in a timely fashion. And that tells you, by the way, what's motivating our own state assembly. Now, I'll grant you some of the folks that are currently in there now that have pushed this bill through weren't in there back in 2009. And I get it that there is probably a core group of individuals right now who have recently come into office, the new freshmen, that have their head on straight. But the simple truth of the matter is this. Like every other governmental legislative body, and whether that's federal or state, these people are driven and motivated in large part by money and by influence and power, and not by the best interests of the American population, which is why I declare that on July 4th we should just basically freeze them out. Because at this point we really don't have much of a choice. The people that we elect to represent us are not doing so. They're not representing us in a clear and unbiased fashion. The proof of the pudding is that this Monsanto Protection Act for the state of Missouri literally went through from the time it was from its inception and the time it was submitted to the time it was passed and out as a ballot initiative was a matter of a couple of weeks.
Yeah. And
yet this thing has been taking years to go through.
Yeah, the deal is, and by the way, folks, I don't even own a gun. This is not, the Second Amendment to me is not about the gun thing in this case, because this Second Amendment Preservation Act nullifies the federal gun control acts of 68 and 34. And what does that mean? That means states' rights. That means it reaffirms the boundary of Missouri as a state, as a separate state, as one of the states keeping the federal government in check. That's why this is so darn important. And my understanding, Mike, is that according to what Ron had told me, is that you actually had to have 15 days left in session in order for them to counter it in this session. But now we've gone beyond that. Unless he were to sign it and say he accepts it.
Hang on. We have to take a break. We're going to get it on his desk in this week. And then the question is, will he sign it within the next 15 days, let it go unsigned and become law, or whether he'll veto it? But you're absolutely right in every one of your points, and I thank you for them. Appreciate you. Okay, folks, we're going to take a quick break. This is America's Voice Now. We are talking about all things American. We'll be back in just a moment.
Fox News Radio, I'm Paul Stevens. Harsh words from Syria after Israeli jets reportedly bomb a military facility north of Damascus early Sunday.
Syria is saying it amounts to a declaration of war and is threatening to retaliate. But here in Israel, the Prime Minister left for a planned trip to China, indicating he didn't see the situation escalating immediately. But the military here has deployed a couple of Iron Dome rocket defense systems to the north of the country.
Fox Radio's Emily Wither in Jerusalem. California officials looking for the cause of a weekend limousine fire that killed 5 women and injured 4 others south of San Francisco. This man shot video of the fire.
My sister's first reaction was to say that there was probably people trapped inside.
The victims were heading to a party celebrating the recent marriage of one of the passengers. The bride was among those killed. 4 passengers escaped. The driver is okay. Fox News, we report, you decide.
Thanks to our friends over at Ozark Mountain Self-Reliance. You can reach Brian down there at 870-492-4030. It's located a half mile east of Walmart on 3225 Route 62, Mountain Home. My dear friend Mary over at Chantilly's Artisan Bakery, the best damn bakery in 100 miles. She's located at number 2 Evans Arcade, and you can call her at 255-2253. My friends over at Pizza Hut on Porter Wagoner Boulevard. They have an outstanding lunch opportunity. You can, from 11 till 2, and you can have salad and pizza, something tasty and something good for you. Our friends Bill Stone over at Stone Construction at 293-0116. If you're considering doing any kind of remodeling, new or custom construction and or light commercial, give Bill a call and let him bid on your next project. Our friends at the Battery Station at 303 Washington Avenue, 417-257-7799. They can be found at thebatterystation.com. Our friends over at West Plains Pawn and Gun, an outstanding opportunity with 400 firearms under glass. You can reach them at 417-256-3000, and they are located at westplainspawn.com. Located physically at Highway 160, about a mile past Walmart on the right-hand side. And finally, the sponsor of our phone lines, Wits End Classic Barbershop, located on the square in West Plains. Best haircut you can get for $10, and a nice young man as well. Please visit and support our sponsors. America's Voice Now, delivering truth over mainstream propaganda every single day. Hi, my name is Michael Evans, and I'm your host, Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. and 8 p.m., and Saturday morning from 6 to 9 a.m. Join me daily for important guests and my unique slant on hot topics in the news. Visit americasvoicenow.org for even more news, articles, and commentary, and watch our show streaming live to your PC. Share your morning with me. Get educated, informed, motivated, and activated. America's Voice Now, right here on 107.1.
News Talk 107 The Point weather sponsorships are available for your business marketing plans. Contact Cody or Josh at 255-2548 for more information.
From the Point Weather Center for this morning, mostly cloudy skies, clouds, maybe a shower as we enter the day. It'll be breezy, high 68. Shade shower this evening, otherwise partly to mostly cloudy tonight, low 50. Tomorrow, partly sunny, high 74. Mostly sunny Wednesday, high 76. I'm staff meteorologist Jim Rinaldi, and for more information, visit my1071thepoint.com.
If you're looking for a new or used pistol, shotgun, or rifle, West Plains Pawn & Gun has over 450 firearms in stock. All your favorite models like Beretta, Glock, Smith & Wesson, Kimber, and many, many more. West Plains Pawn & Gun is also a Class 3 arms dealer, so if they don't have it on the shelf, West Plains Pawn & Gun can order it for you. Even those hard-to-get guns. West Plains Pawn & Gun, 1713 U.S. Highway 160 West in West Plains, or online at westplainspawn.com.
You know, the challenge that we face is critically important to the survival of our republic. We face a challenge where our government is descending into tyranny at a rapid pace. Kansas recently passed their Second Amendment Preservation Act, slightly different from ours. And I read you over the weekend Eric Holder's letter to them stating that they had no right to declare a federal law unconstitutional. I'd like you to hear something that's kind of interesting. This is where Holder is stating that the feds will ignore state gun laws. Now, with all due respect, if we don't have the 10th Amendment and that's a violation of the 10th Amendment for the federal government to ignore state law. If we don't have the 10th Amendment, then what we really have is 50 regional managers under a federal government. And I don't know how anyone, in any way, shape, or form, can read any of the founders' documents and believe that that was their intent.
To decide whether it will continue to enforce federal anti-marijuana laws in states that have legalized recreational use of the substance. But there's no ambiguity about its intentions to ignore state laws intended to protect the rights of gun owners. In an April 26 letter to Kansas Governor Sam Brownback, Attorney General Eric Holder stated that federal agencies will continue to enforce all federal firearm laws and regulations within Kansas, despite a recently enacted state law criminalizing enforcement of federal anti-gun laws. Holder also said that the Obama administration will take all appropriate action, including litigation if necessary, to prevent the state of Kansas from interfering with the activities of federal officials enforcing federal law.
Former Secretary of State Henry Kissinger appeared to confer his benediction on Hillary Clinton's presidential ambitions.
All right, so I got to tell you, where we are is the feds are ignoring state gun laws, but Fast and Furious is okay. Benghazi is okay, right? So I want you to understand something. When you got a president who goes out there and tells graduates that you'll grow up hearing voices that incessantly warn of government as nothing more than a separate, sinister entity that's the root of all our problems, some of these same voices do their best to gum up the works. They warn that tyranny is always lurking around the corner. I got to tell you something. Our founders were the ones who actually said that tyranny was lurking around every corner. And not for nothing, but, you know, their words are still worthwhile 235 or 250 years later. This piece of trash, and yes, I do not respect or honor this man in any way, shape, or form. And quite frankly, I don't respect or honor the seat he sits in, because this is the seat which has now become the dictatorial tyranny throne. If the president has descended, if the presidency has descended into this kind of ideological, tyrannical diatribe, we have no further point in respecting the seat of president. This man has single-handedly destroyed the value that 250 years of honor and integrity and duty has been built into the idea of the seat of president. I'm going to tell you something. These aren't my words. Governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of those ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such a form as to them shall most likely affect their safety and happiness. That tells you that our founders believed that when a government becomes destructive of the ends, which is essentially government's sole function, that is to protect the rights of the individual. The rights are life, liberty, property, pursuit of happiness, privacy. That in order to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men. Not to tell you what they are, but to secure these rights. That derive their just powers from the consent of the governed. Dave Perry, the consent of the governed is what destroyed the Second Amendment treasonous bills that were ran through the Senate. Not the NRA. This was the consent of the governed who said, we don't consent to it. Now, they were wise enough to recognize that every little crisis should not be a reason to toss the government under the bus and start over. In fact, they made it very clear. Prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient cause. And accordingly, all experience has shown that mankind is more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the form to which they are accustomed. What they were stating there is that we only resort to changing that government, to abolishing it or altering it or throwing the bums out when the insufferability becomes impossible to ignore and the actual government itself has descended into tyranny. Here's how I know that. Because the next sentence tells us so. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government. When absolute despotism becomes the rule of the day, then and only then can you unleash the power of the Second Amendment. Because the first has failed. The third has failed to withhold the tyranny. The fourth has failed to withhold the tyranny. The fifth has failed to withhold the tyranny. The sixth, the seventh, the eighth, the ninth, and the 10th. That states have been unable to contain the monster. The bars of the prison that are created by the Constitution. You see, the Constitution is a negative document. It doesn't give any power at all. It bars and prohibits power. And when those bars are bent, when the monster has grown so powerful that it can no longer contain it, the 10th is eradicated. When the 10th is eradicated, we also see that tyranny and abuse and a long train of usurpations have resulted in absolute despotism. At that point, all hands on deck, whatever it takes, contain the monster. That's what they intended. That's what they meant. That's why they gave us this language. And trust me, this language went through an enormous amount of careful review, critical thinking. This wasn't some teleprompter speech written by some half-baked slackard who sits in the office. This was written by a series and group of intelligent men who sat down and hammered over these words until they'd taken a piece of heavy bar steel and molded it into something beautiful and solid and long-lived. Go ahead, caller. Welcome to the show.
Hi, good morning, Mike. I kind of want to say this real quickly to younger listeners. A lot of them sit around and think, "Oh, you old farts! You're looking at conspiracy theories. You're wearing tinfoil hats. You guys are nuts. You're a bunch of old folks that are nuts." And so I want to say this real quickly to them and all of us. I think the challenge right now is trying to get the word out and explaining and showing, convincing young people that our nation is actually in serious trouble, that we're not just wearing tinfoil hats, that we're not being paranoid, pushy old people that have nothing else to do. We have a lot of other things to do. But we, as this generation, we're becoming unable to help our children and our grandchildren and our families due to what the elite politicians are doing, what they're ruling, and what their laws are. and we're trying to warn young voters. I mean, we're kind of like, riding across the country yelling, "The British are coming! The British are coming!" The reason I called
if they don't heed the call, we've got a break. If they don't heed the call,
I need to hold on.
All right, hang on a second, folks. We'll be right back.
If you're looking for great deals on iPads or Kindles, look no further than your neighborhood Radio Shack authorized sales center. They've got great deals on the latest iPads and Kindles. Maybe you need a new GPS or an MP3 player to get your music library ready for those barbecues. Whatever your electronic needs, stop by your local neighborhood Radio Shack authorized dealer in West Plains at 1408 Southern Hills Shopping Center or call 417-256-1819.
And now an important message this Mother's Day. Nearly many women fall victim to breast cancer. If detected early, steps can be taken towards prevention and treatment. Please schedule a mammogram ASAP. That's from Danahay Auction Service, serving our entire listening area as your professional auctioneers with the right knowledge and expertise to handle all your auction needs. Real estate sales, jewelry, luxuries, or memorabilia, rely on the best. Danahay Auction Service. Call 417-256-9667. 417-256-9667. Where going has a special ring. The ring of cash in your pocket. Call 417-256-9667.
I once lassoed a shooting star that dragged me into a U.S. cellular store where I saved $100 on a 4G LTE Samsung Galaxy Note 10.1. Yeah, right. $100 savings on the newest Galaxy Note tablet? Crazy talk.
Get great deals on all our Galaxy devices like $100 off the 4G LTE Samsung Galaxy Note 10.1 tablet. U.S. Cellular. Hello, better. Certain restrictions apply. Applicable data plan required. New 2-year agreement and $35 device activation fee may apply. See store for details.
We're made to look like we don't have a heart, that we don't care. Have courage and have faith and stand and do the right thing. Hopefully, the rest of the country will come around. But somebody has to say the hard thing. We have to do the right thing, even though it may be painful for all of us.
This is the Glenn Beck Program.
Weekdays from 2 to 5, it's Glenn Beck on the Ozarks' Best News Talk 107.1.
All right, we're back for our final segment. We're going to finish off the last part of that phone call from the alert to our youth. Go ahead, caller.
Hi. And the reason I called this morning, Mike, is that we all really, truly need to start talking to young people. Because the LDS canneries, it said east, I believe, of the Mississippi, are closing. As of June 26th, that's the last date that you can buy bulk grain or food or anything from them, because after that they're going to be in the selling business, and they've been shut down by government regulation. Actually, they've decided to shut down because government regulations are now so steep that they can't match them. And some of the regulations in the orchard are that if an apple falls on the ground that they've picked, they cannot pick it up and put it back in the bushel or in the pack to go to the canning factory, to go to their canning. They can't do it because that's now a contaminated, no good, infected apple. And so...
Well, okay, I'm doing a little bit of homework and research here, and I'm seeing articles that are saying that they have not actually closed, that this isn't an official statement. So
no, from the LDS... from the LDS Church, they have not. The LDS Church has not issued a formal statement as of yet. What is happening is that
they're considering halting their wet canning operations due to government regulation and harassment.
What they've actually doing is they are actually putting up notices to people locally where they are that as of January 26th, that's it. So we need to look further. What I'm seeing here is government tyranny.
They're saying it because of regulations and harassment. I don't disagree with that. We'll have to remain. It'll remain to be seen whether or not they actually do that. But I appreciate the update and the information on that. Thank you. This will be a story if the LDS comes out and makes a formal announcement on it. So.
Right. Okay. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Go ahead, caller. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Mike. This is Brian from Ozark Mountain Self-Reliance.
Hi, Brian. How are you?
Got a comment because of the things that I chose to put in my office, it was the Declaration of Independence that I chose over even the Constitution. The document that started it, it's the document that needs to stand when it's all done. here's something you need to think about, and then I'll get off the line. If our Constitution was what we think it is, why do we have the mess that we do? Even Thomas Jefferson knew from the beginning the courts were all messed up, and we can only vote by their design, 1/3 of these people out at a time. It was either too weak to achieve it or designed to create it. It's time we take the senators back home by amending the 17th Amendment and making sure our states put them in power, not this general election.
You're absolutely correct. I 100% stand behind the principle of repealing the 17th Amendment. It was, along with a host of other bills, all passed in that same couple of year period, 1912, 1913-ish, 1916. And the principle and the goal of all of those was to turn this nation into a progressive libertarian or liberal world where the roots of the Constitution and the foundation and the fabric of the rule of law could be usurped. And
absolutely.
This is the 17th Amendment is indicative of that, because they understood well that that the 10th Amendment is based upon the fact that your elected representatives have some say in the federal government. But once you've taken away the legislature's ability to instruct and confirm and force that legislator to actually represent the state, not the individual people. We already have a House of Representatives. Making the Senate subject to the public vote is doubling the purpose of the House of Representatives. That's not what their intention was. Their intention was the House of Representatives represented the people, and the senator represented the state. In their 10th Amendment equal and co-equal government role with the federal government.
I agree.
So you're absolutely correct. I stand 100% for the repeal of the 17th Amendment. And at some point in time, when we take our nation back, and I do say when we take our nation back, not if, we will, one of the first things that we need to do is repeal the 17th Amendment. Absolutely.
Make them come home.
Absolutely. Make them come home. Let the Senate and the House in the state appoint the appropriate senatorial legislator, because then they have the ability to call that person back and say, excuse me, Ms. McCaskill, 70% of our state said that they do not want this bill that you just voted for called Obamacare. What the hell do you think you're doing?
Yeah.
Get it?
2 weeks later, they're out, and we put somebody else that will do as we say.
Absolutely. Hey, thank you very much. I appreciate the call. Folks, that was Brian. That was Brian from Ozark's Mountain Self-Reliance down in Mountain Home, excuse me. He's a great supporter of our program and an advertiser with us, and I encourage you to visit him. Go ahead, caller.
Yes, you mentioned the Tea Party earlier, and in connection with the UKIP, and I support the Tea Party and the UKIP, but I just wanted to note that the Tea Party patriots are conducting a straw poll right now on the 2016 potential presidential candidates, and I was appalled to find that no less than 5 of the candidates on their straw poll list are ineligible, because they're not natural born citizens. Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz, Bobby Jindal, Nikki Haley. There's at least 5 of them that are not natural born citizens, and so even the Tea Party, proclaiming itself a patriotic organization, doesn't get the foundational principle in our Article 2, Section 1 provision for a natural-born citizen as our president. So,
well, I think as things unravel here over the course of the next couple of years during the tyrant-in-chief's and the traitor-in-chief's waning days of this administration, you're going to see a backlash against this kind of thing, because it's becoming very, very apparent now that this guy was never qualified to be the president. 1, because of his birth. 2, because of his inexperience, basically, in being a president. And 3rd, because of his absolute ideology. So I can only hope and pray that Americans and the Tea Party as a collective group recognize that going forward we cannot allow any, and I love Senator Ted Cruz, but he should not be president.
No,
I'm 100% in agreement. Listen, you're preaching to the choir here. Just let me finish. I'm 100% behind Senator Ted Cruz, but he has no right to be president. That's the end of the discussion. And anybody from the Tea Party who's even considering those names of Rubio and Cruz, wake up and smell the coffee. Go read your Constitution again and make sure that we never, under any circumstances, ever allow another person with split loyalty to be running our nation.
Amen.
Hey, go ahead, caller. Welcome to the show.
Good morning, Mike. This is Rich from Branson. Real quickly, the very first paragraph of the Declaration of Independence tells us what to do. It says, when in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands. That's a legislative act. That's that BS they keep passing. Okay?
Right.
And that's what we got to do. They have created a citizen slavery by and through the 14th Amendment and tricked the rest of us all to come into that realm or into that statutory citizenship. We got to dissolve it, period. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you. What he was referencing there, folks, was when in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them. A decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. That's the preamble. And the reason why that was written that way is they were declaring to the world the cause and the reason which impelled them to separation. Impelled them to separation from the king. Impelled them from separation from the laws that had governed them heretofore out of England, which were apparently and blatantly not friendly to them, that were a violation of the laws of nature and nature's God that they were entitled to. So you have to understand, we are at the same point. We are at a crossroads in this country where we need to reassert our Declaration of Independence, and we need to reassert this Declaration of Independence from the existing tyranny that exists in Washington. Our goal as individuals should be the grassroots driving force behind removing those in office from power. We don't have a choice anymore. We must declare our independence and our sovereignty. And we must ensure that the 10th Amendment is not only respected, but that it is followed. Because recognize something. When we have one entity that overrides all other entities, you don't have co-equal or equal and balanced government. What you now have is a federal government that, where they cannot bribe the states with money, simply asserts another force upon them that will encourage them. It's coercion, whether it's coercion through money or coercion through Eric Holder saying, if you pass a state law that bars federal law, we're going to follow federal law, and we don't give a hang about your state law. Let me tell you something, folks. That is tyranny talking. That's tyrannical speech. That's fascism. We are in danger. The incoming bombs are coming so close. They are danger close. You're listening to America's Voice. Please find us on Facebook at facebook.com/America's Voice Now. You can find this and every other program at youtube.com/America's Voice Now. And you can find us on the web at americasvoicenow.org. We'll see you tomorrow morning.
We are the Ozarks' best news talk, KBMV Birch Tree.
Fox News Radio, I'm Dave Anthony. The days of us buying all kinds of things on the internet without paying taxes may soon come to an end. Fox News Radio's Rich Johnson, live in Washington.
It's called the Marketplace Fairness Act. And supporters say it levels the playing field between traditional stores and online merchants by mandating sales tax collections regardless of the store's location. Current law only lets states collect sales tax on internet transactions if the seller has a physical presence in the state. While it probably will pass the Senate vote this afternoon, might have trouble in the House. Republicans there regard the measure to let states collect the tax as a tax increase. Dave?
Rich is